All right, the time is 2 p.m., so I will call the Tuesday, December 13th, 2022 regular council meeting to order and begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis, and we acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuits, whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. So, welcome and thank you. All right, so the first item that we have, so it's a little bit different this time. We changed our procedural bylaw to provide for a consent agenda. There's a motion in front of you. So if somebody puts this motion on, it would approve the minutes in 3.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It would also approve item 7.2, the Transfer Station Capital Project, and 7.4, the Capital Region Assessment Services Commission. Now, if any member of council doesn't want one of these as part of the consent agenda, they can request it to be taken out and dealt with separately. So I will leave that up to council. So I do require a motion. Councillor Kelly.
I would move that council approve the consent agenda as circulated.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open it up for any discussion if everybody's in agreement with it. Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. I just had a question on the Alberta Recycling Management Authority grant.
Okay.
The transfer
go ahead.
station.
If it's
Can I go
quick
ahead?
and easy that we can take care of it.
It's really a really simple question. I was just wondering, did the scope of the project change? Because I know we did get a grant approved for this. Did the scope of the project change? Because why are we increasing the budget? And is the better plan to move the funds into reserves rather than just because we got a grant approved?
So to your worship, we actually have Ms. Miller online right now. She can answer the question.
Perfect, thank you.
Go ahead, Sadie.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, grant funding normally received through ARMA would be captured as an operating budget revenue. In this case, the purchase of that used oil structure was part of the capital project. So it's really just a best practice to allocate that money towards the project itself because that's where the pool of money was coming from.
Yeah, thank you for that, but you didn't really answer my question. My question was, did the scope of the project change? Because if the scope didn't change, then the budget shouldn't be changing.
The scope didn't change, no. So the purchase of that used oil structure was always planned, but the grant was an unexpected perk. So
I'm still finding it difficult to understand because...
Yeah, so council approved the project at a certain amount with a certain funding source. All we're doing today is changing the funding source. We're not changing the amount of the project.
Perfect. Thank you for clearing that up. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this motion is now closed on the consent agenda. Please cast your vote. Motion is carried. All right, we will move on to the next item. Delegation, we have one registered. Sean Carolan would like to speak on the tax waiver. You're welcome to come to the front, and you will have 5 minutes to present. You'll just have to turn your button on. Cheryl?
Thank you. I really don't have a whole lot to say. Just between COVID, life, job loss kind of got me and I got behind. But I'm back on track. I have a clear plan for 2023 and this should not happen again. And I do apologize.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No, not seeing any. So we will be dealing with this later in the agenda. You're welcome to stay, or you can, if you leave, you can watch it on YouTube, or staff will notify you of the result after.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's your choices, but it will be a little bit later in the agenda. Okay? All right, thank you. Okay, and thank you very much for coming in. We will deal with bylaw 5.1, or item 5.1, bylaw C30-22 to establish user fees, rates, and charges. Mr. Eamon.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Jeremy Eamon, the City's Chief Financial Officer. I'm here to present a request for decision for Council to give 3 readings to Bylaw C30-22, which establishes the 2023 user fees, rates, and charges for services provided by the City of Fort Saskatchewan. The City establishes and collects user fees and charges in accordance with the User Fees and Charges Policy, FIN 009-C. The policy provides a consistent and transparent approach to considering and establishing user fees and charges for relevant goods and services offered by the City. Information on the City's user fees and charges, established in accordance with the policy, was presented to Council for deliberation during the 2023 budget meetings. Bylaw C30-22 reflects the user fees, rates, and charges recognized within the 2023 budget, inclusive of adjustments based on decisions made by Council over the course of the budget meetings. In order to collect revenue from user fees, rates, and charges recognized within the 2023 budget, it is necessary for Council to approve this bylaw. Therefore, Administration recommends that Council give 3 readings to Bylaw C30-22 to establish the 2023 user fees, rates, and charges for services provided by the City. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. I will open it up for questions. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you for your presentation, Jeremy. We talked about the user fees over budgets, but I just have like a more general question. And the reason I'm asking this question is, well, let me ask the question first. Were there any programs or services that used to be covered under property taxes that have now been moved to user fees as a source of revenue, or vice versa? And I'm asking this question because currently, as with seats on our budgets, we're at about 9% user fees. And when I do research of just where municipalities generally are, it falls between 5 to up to 20%. So is there an opportunity there for us as a municipality? And that's why I'm asking that question.
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoye, I'm not aware off the top of my head of any sources of revenue that have transferred from property taxes to user fees. I know we're diligent looking at our service levels and within our service level policy in terms of development of the budget, and looking at opportunities to enhance our user fees. We're looking at the policy in the new year, and that'll be part of the discussion with Council. So in answer to your question, I can't think of any that we've done for the 23 budget, but it's something we could look at in the future.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, question?
Thank you, Jeremy. One quick question, probably to yourself or Mr. Dance. And just to keep the subject alive, you referenced it, but when can Council expect the review on user fees and a report on user fees to get to Council chambers?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, we are booked for the February Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Jeremy. Just one quick request. I'm not sure this is the right place to do it, but so during budget, we had user fees accumulated in one document similar to this at the end of our budget binder. For the purposes of 2024 budgeting, can we request that user fees be shown after the department to which they're corresponding within our budget binder, if we're going to be doing budget the same way that we did this year?
Through your worship to Councillor Nguyen, we'll take that into consideration for development of the 2024 budget, is what you're referring to?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd
Duly noted. Thank you.
Unless there are objections to that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Don't see any other questions. Councillor Blissard.
Just like to make the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw C30-22, which establishes user fees, rates, and charges for services provided by the City of Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion?
I think we just need to approve this. We've discussed some of these user fees and charges as we went along the budget.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open it up for discussion and debate. Councillor Abatoye.
Just to speak in favor of the motion, I think user fees are really important for our community as we have to pay for all the services that we provide. And it's also a source of revenue for us to continue to balance our budget. But I was watching something on the news recently, and they're talking about some municipalities in the US that are beginning to move or divert services like emergency services to user fees. I think that's absolutely ridiculous because you don't want people to be thinking about fees when they're calling the police or fire truck. But I think that's well, going forward, we can start to look at different strategies on how we can, optimize our user fees more. But I definitely support this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any further discussion and debate. Anything on close? All right, I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote on first reading. That is carried. You may proceed if you like. You have to push your button. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that council gives second reading to bylaw C30-22, which establishes user fees, rates, and charges for services provided by the City of Fort Saskatchewan.
All right, thank you. Anything further to speak in favor? Nothing? Just leave your mic on. Anything on discussion and debate? Not seeing anything further. I'll close the motion on second reading. Please cast your vote. That is carried. You may present it for unanimous consent.
I'd like to make a motion that council provide unanimous consent to proceed with third and final reading to bylaw C30-22, which establishes user rates, fees, and charges for services provided by the City of Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried. You may present it for third.
I'd like to make a motion that council give third reading to bylaw C30, there's a little typo here, -22, which establishes user fees, rates, and charges for services provided by the City of Fort Saskatchewan.
Thank you. I think Ms. Exley just has to correct that. Okay, please cast your vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. All right, the next one is operating and capital budget adoption. Go ahead, Mr. Eamon. God bless somebody out there.
Thank you, Your Worship, and again, good afternoon, members of council. My name is Jeremy Eamon, Chief Financial Officer for the City. I'm here along with Shannon Andruko, Manager, Budget and Financial Planning, to present Administration's report requesting Council's formal approval of the 2023 municipal budget. Approval of the municipal budget by Council represents the final step in the City's annual budget process and fulfills the requirements of the Municipal Government Act. The MGA requires Council to approve an operating and a capital budget for each calendar year, and municipalities to prepare written 3- and 5-year plans respecting their anticipated financial operations and capital property additions, for which Council must review and update these plans on an annual basis. The Fort Saskatchewan Public Library operates under the Libraries Act, which requires the Library Board to prepare an annual budget and a request or an estimate of required funds for Council's consideration. The 2023 municipal budget identifies and allocates resources needed to provide for the municipal programs and services that support Council's goals and strategic initiatives within the strategic plan. The 2023 municipal budget was developed in accordance with the Operating and Capital Budgets Policy, FIN 24-C, and once approved, will provide an operating and a capital budget for 2023, a 3-year operating financial plan forecast for years 2024 through 2026, and a 2023 appropriation to the Fort Saskatchewan Public Library. Highlights of the 2023 operating budget include $89.4 million in total operating revenues, expenses, and transfers. This includes $21.4 million for utility operations and a $1.3 million appropriation to the Fort Saskatchewan Public Library. Appendix 1 to the Council report outlines the overall 2023 operating budget and provides a detailed breakdown of the operating revenues, expenses, and transfers. Appendix 2 provides details of adjustments which are reflected in the 2023 operating budget and are based on Council motions passed during the budget deliberation meetings and other updates made by administration. These adjustments include ongoing, one-time, and capital adjustments and resulted in approximately $56,000 in net property tax revenue reductions from the operating budget as originally proposed. Highlights of the 2023 capital budget include $21.1 million in total capital revenues and expenditures. Appendix 3 of the Council report shows a listing of all capital projects included in the 2023 capital budget. Total capital expenditures by asset category include $16.9 million for engineering structures, $2.5 million for vehicles, machinery, and equipment, and $1.7 million for land improvements. And just as a reminder, the Jubilee Recreation Center Modernization Project will be brought back to Council in early 2023 for Phase 2 budget approval prior to commencing construction. And as well, during the 2023 budget meetings, Council performed an initial review of the 2023-2032 10-year capital plan and is scheduled to perform another review in June 2023 prior to adoption. Next, I'll review the financial impacts arising from the 2023 municipal budget. The 2023 user fees, rates, and charges bylaw includes updated utility rates for 2023. Residential utility customers can expect an estimated increase of $2.75 or 2.35% to their monthly utility bills compared to 2022. This is based on an average 14 cubic meter monthly water consumption and includes water, sewer, and waste management services. Regarding municipal property taxes, the 2023 budget includes $54.1 million in total property tax revenue collected. This includes $1.5 million from estimated growth in property assessments and $1.6 million from projected spending in 2023. This results in a 3.05% property tax revenue increase from 2022 and estimates the impact to residential and non-residential property owners for their 2023 municipal property taxes compared to 2022. However, depending upon how a property's assessment changes relative to the average annual change in assessment for the assessment class, a property owner may see their property taxes change by more or less than 3.05%. And please note, this reflects the municipal portion of property taxes only. The city also collects property taxes in the form of provincial education taxes and the Heartland Housing Foundation Seniors Housing Requisition. Property tax rates for 2023 will be finalized next spring with Council's approval of the 2023 property tax bylaw. Administration recommends that Council approve the 2023 operating and capital budgets dated December 13th, 2022, and the 2023 appropriation to the Fort Saskatchewan Public Library, and adopt the 2024 to 2026 operating financial plan forecast. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions at this time.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I'll open it up for any questions. Councillor Kelly.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. you touched on it in your, it caught my attention, the capital budget. The motion references roughly $21 million. And if I look at Appendix 2, I think page 69 of our material, the bottom line for capital is stated at 27 million. And you do have an asterisk and a note below the next page, page 70, referencing the Jubilee Rec Center. I think you're giving a heads up to council, I suppose, but I don't understand why we would include in our capital budget document something that we haven't approved yet.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly. So looking at that, the 27 million would be the total capital budget, including the JRC modernization.
Yep.
The motion that we have before us tonight or this afternoon is just for the 21, so it excludes the JRC.
And I appreciate that, Jeremy.
Yes.
My concern really is the documentation that shows 27 million.
Okay.
And I understand that there's something that we're going to talk about later, but I would prefer, I guess. So the question is, I guess you've answered it. I won't beat it up. I'll wait till the motion is made. The 10-year capital plan and the 3-year operating budget. I took a look at the MGA when I read this. I can find nothing in the MGA, and I'm asking for clarification, that indicates that council must in fact adopt those by resolution. Am I accurate? Yes or no?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, there is no requirement to formally adopt. We do, as a city practice, go through the motion, like have a motion on record that council has reviewed and updated the 10-year capital plan. We do that through the adoption motion. But you are correct, there is no requirement to adopt. As long as there is a review by council, that would be sufficient in terms of the MGA.
But we have a motion to adopt the 3-year operating budget, but
Yes.
we don't have a motion in front of us to adopt the 10-year capital plan. And I'm wondering why.
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly. So the plan is for council to do another review of the 10-year capital plan in June of 2023 based on studies that are outstanding. And at that point, if council is willing to adopt it, they'll adopt it then. I hope that answers your question.
It's exactly what I expected, but I wanted it on tape.
Okay.
We don't have, then, to summarize, we don't have a 10-year capital plan that we're prepared to live with at this time. We reviewed it, but it's just step one.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Batoye, questions?
Yes, thank you. Just a really little question here about the Water Commission reduction for about 13 cents that we're not passing on to residents. And I'm just wondering, first of all, what this 13 cents, what does it translate to? I know it's really small, but what does it translate to per year, per household? And when we were setting our rates, didn't we factor in transfer to reserves? Why are we not transferring this reduction to residents?
Through your worship to Councillor Abatoya. So because the reduction is so small, and this was information that was essentially given to us after the budget meetings were completed, the idea is to transfer it to the Utility Infrastructure Reserve would be the most prudent choice rather than to go back and make an adjustment to the water rate. Given that the reserve is under its optimal balance, we're looking at ways to ensure that monies get directed to that, and it was felt that that was the best choice in terms of dealing with this small adjustment.
So, but we haven't presented the rates to the residents yet, right? For 23 utilities.
Through your worship, Councillor Abatoya. So they're part of the 2023 utilities budget that was deliberated by council. Yeah,
I'm aware, but I'm saying the residents haven't been informed of the rates for 23.
Through your worship, so they would be part of the approval process this afternoon. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It looks like that's all the questions. Would somebody like to put a motion on? Councillor Macon, go ahead.
I can start with the first one. I'll make the motion that council adopt the 2024 to 2026 operating financial plan forecast and approve the 2023 operating budget dated December 13th, 2022, establishing total operating revenues and expenditures at 89,370,394, which includes 21,426,845 for the utilities budget.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Just to say that I think that we had a lot of great debate during the budget process, and I'm happy with the outcome as it sits at the time.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up for discussion and debate. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. I'd just like to share an observation, and I preface it with the comment that I do think that the operating budget was well prepared this year. But for council's knowledge, without the growth of $1.5 million, our property tax increase this year would have been in excess of 6%. So thank God we had the growth this year, but it's a little bit of a loss leader because next year that growth will actually cost us money and impact the budget directly. And it's an observation that the way to monitor and police property tax increases, there's only one way, and that's to monitor and police and do our best to work on the operating expenses as they arise. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Abatoye on discussion and debate.
Thank you. I prepared a little bit of a speech for this one, so please bear with me. So I'd like to start first by saying thank you to administration for all of their hard work on providing the budget documents. I do know it's not a small feat for keeping council fully informed to allow us make important decisions about funding, spending responsibly, and delivering high quality services in our community. As we know, inflation has been on an all-time high this year and the last couple of years, and has impacted several aspects of our lives, including property taxes. And we see an increase in property taxes of for this budget year of 3.05%. And, you know, it's really as a result of, you know, inflation, the city is growing, and, you know, and we need to continue to deliver our services. But I just want to bring it to our remembrance that the last 2 years, we've actually seen zero tax increase. And it's necessary for us to spend money to invest in our future and our operations. So I support the budget as it has been presented. As a municipality, I believe that, you know, as we make decisions about programs we want to invest in, we need to determine, you know, if it's something that benefits the whole community versus a select few. And so obviously just providing beneficiary services and programs, I think it's important. So, you know, just to say I appreciate the work that's been done so far with this document. I support it, and I hope that we can go forward, you know, finding innovative ways to continue to reduce the tax burdens on residents. Looking at the 3-year operating budgets, you know, we continue to see an increase, which obviously will happen due to as we continue to grow as a community and as we continue to add on services. But I think that we need to continue to find, you know, fiscally responsible ways to provide reduction in tax burdens in our residents, and, you know, and see great opportunities, even like I said about the user fee category. I think there's a great opportunity there for us to explore. Once again, thank you, and that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. And I'd just like to thank Mr. Fleming and Mr. Eamon and all leadership team and the staff for the amount of work and effort goes into this. Many people don't understand that by the time the calendar flips over into January, by February, you're already looking at 2024. So it's a long undertaking and it's a very long process. And you have a lot of stuff. And I'm going to say stuff that's thrown at you because inflation has been a real impact. And, you know, people want services and they want programs, and just trying to deal with a balance. I think you've done probably the best that you could do. And I'd like to thank council also for the excellent discussion and debate that happened through the budget process. So thank you. Councillor Macon on close.
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Did you want to do the next one? Somebody else want to do the second one? Okay, go ahead.
All right, I'll make the motion that council approve the 2023 capital budget dated December 13th, 2022, establishing total capital revenues and expenditures at $21,106,800.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak in favor?
Same thing with the operating budget. We had a lot of debate on this, and I think that, you know, with different varieties of revenue sources, we've made the right decisions for our municipality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The motion is open for discussion and debate. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Back again to the 5.9 million, I think, in JRC renovation. If the costing isn't anticipated till spring, is it management's opinion that we'll be able to spend the 5.9 million, or at least a significant portion of it, in 2023, or will that budget, or could that budget in fact wait until 24?
To your worship, we would be at the point then where we would be around a class 2 cost estimate. We would be, after the point where we go to council in the spring, we would be committing to those funds either way. They may not all get expended by the end of the year, but they would pretty well be committed.
Okay, thank you.
You're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for myself, while we had great discussion and debate, there's one project that I absolutely don't support in this. I think everybody knows which one it is, and I'm one of the few that didn't support it. So it's such a big project that I actually won't be voting for the capital budget, because to support that, it would say that I'm actually supporting that project, and I don't. Councillor Macon, on close?
Nothing on close, thanks.
Okay, please cast your vote. Motion is carried 6-1. Would you like to continue with the last one? Or Patrick said he wouldn't mind doing it. Okay, go ahead.
I move that
Just a second.
I think it's on. I move that council approve the 2023 Fort Saskatchewan Public Library appropriation of $1,317,000.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I will. As the appointed member of the library board, I think and being on the library board, we had quite a bit of discussion on ways that the library's budget could go for 2023 with a new director that is coming from Strathcona County that has a vision for our library and being extremely progressive and innovative. I support the slight increase in budget for 2023 and look forward to what the library is going to have to offer for our citizens. I think literacy is utmost of importance for our society and for our community. And looking forward to what the library is going to be doing here in the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. The motion is open for discussion and debate. Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Eamon. I think, no, you're back here. No, that one was consent. You are done for today. All right, thank you very much. The next one we have is bylaw C26-22, amending traffic bylaw C17-22 for second and third reading. And we have Corinne Rayner and Lee Hardman. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Corinne Rayner. I'm the Director of Protective Services for the city. With me, I have Sergeant Lee Hardman, the Supervisor for Municipal Enforcement. We are here presenting bylaw C26-22, amending the traffic bylaw C17-21. Council received first reading of this amending bylaw on October the 11th, and we have brought back some additional amendments based on the direction we received from Council. There are 4 amendments we will be making with this bylaw. The first was a housekeeping item with Section 29A. The fine amount was left out of the previous amendment, and we're just correcting that. The second amendment is for the enforcement of excessive vehicle noise by the use of decibel readings. And Council asked us to look at parking on residential streets and parking for recreational vehicles and trailers, and the difference between the 72 hours and the 24-hour time limits that we have. A review of the proposed changes are that Section 29, as I mentioned, is just a housekeeping item. We are also making some changes to the definitions by replacing the definition of disturbing noises to include decibel readings and adding definitions that pertain to the use of sound meters and the enforcement of those decibel readings. The second amendment is to change Section 8 to disturbing noises. Vehicle noise has become an important issue raised by our residents. Adding the decibel readings will allow for officers to have an objective tool to help enforce that excessive vehicle noise. These recommended decibel readings while at idle and while at a speed greater than idling are 92 and 96 decibel readings respectively, with a penalty of $250 for this and $500 for failing to comply with the sound meter test. To determine the appropriate decibel limits for our bylaw, we first researched comparator bylaws and received a legal opinion finding that we should permit decibel readings for all vehicles, all types of vehicles. All of the bylaws relating to vehicle noise do have similar decibel readings, and we feel it is important to stay consistent with what's happening in the region. We will keep a close eye on this over the next year and how these decibel readings will fare in court proceedings and what municipalities in the regions are experiencing. Adjustments can be made if we feel this does not meet the needs in our community. When it comes to parking, municipal enforcement does take an educational approach first with parking. Ticketing is a final step in getting to people move their vehicles. Parking makes up 7% of our total workload in municipal enforcement. There were a total of 324 parking complaints in all of 2022. 15% of those is to do with recreational vehicles and 20% to do with the abandoned vehicles on the street. Municipal enforcement assists our roads department during snow clearing and street sweeping, and this is where we see the bulk of our parking issues with people failing to park according to the signs. I wanted to take a moment to clarify and explain how our traffic bylaw works in relation to the Traffic Safety Act. During our last presentation, we had discussion about the sections where we default to the Traffic Safety Act with certain sections, and then we fall within the bylaw for others. The Traffic Safety Act gives council the authority within the municipality governing the use of highways, parking, speed limits, and vehicle noise. So we can create bylaws with restrictions that veer off from the Traffic Safety Act according to those specifications. This is where the difference in the 72-hour limit and the 72-hour for on-street parking and the 24-hour limit for recreational vehicles came into play. A 24-hour limit on recreational vehicles was given by council many years ago, and the intent there was to limit the parking of recreational vehicles due to their size and the amount of parking that they do take up in the neighborhoods, and ensuring that they can come in and load and unload and get off the street. So these do make up about 20% of parking complaints. The time limit varies in different municipalities, and we have found that 48 hours seems to be a consistent time limit for recreational vehicles and trailers within many of the bylaws. Strathcona County does have a 36-hour limit in their community. So we've made the suggested changes to Section 29, recreational vehicles and trailers. All trailers have been added to this section to treat them the same as a recreational vehicle. We have increased the time to park on the street from 24 hours to 48 hours. This time frame will have give residents adequate time to load and unload their trailer or recreational vehicle. We have added the recreational vehicle and trailer must be removed for a period of 48 hours off of the street. The 48-hour limit is similar to other municipalities, and we feel it will suit the needs in our community for loading and unloading trailers, and also to ensure that there is adequate street parking, having them removed for a period of 48 hours. We have also changed the word in section 29 sub D to read a recreational vehicle or trailer shall not be parked on a highway with their slides open towards the highway. This replaced the word extended. When it comes to street parking, there are many factors to consider. And street parking, and especially in our residential areas, is at a premium. Most households have multiple vehicles and they do utilize the street to park their vehicles. We currently default to section 76 of the Traffic Safety Act for abandoned vehicles when it comes to our on-street parking. So this section of the Traffic Safety Act allows us to ensure we do not have abandoned vehicles on the street and keeps vehicles moving every 72 hours. The intent here is not to limit or prohibit parking on the street, and I think this is an important distinction. The intent is to keep people from leaving inoperable vehicles and abandoned vehicles on the street. So the chalking of the tires enables officers to see that the vehicle in fact did move and is a working vehicle that's parked on the street. This has been working for municipal enforcement and is an effective way of enforcing on-street parking in the community. From the direction that we received from Council on October the 11th, we were asked to fix the problem where people were just moving their vehicle ahead a few inches. This is how they come into compliance with the Section 76 of the Traffic Safety Act. We do have a few options for Council to consider in order to address the issue of people just moving their vehicle ahead a few inches. Option 1 is our recommended option. We've stayed consistent with the 72-hour time limit, and no person shall park a vehicle at a single location on a highway or in close proximity to that single location for a period exceeding 72 hours. So we've stayed with the 72 hours, but we do have a little bit of ability there that the vehicle will then be moved at least a car length away. Adding this new wording would prevent them from just moving a few inches. It's not too restrictive that we have them completely moving their vehicle off the block for a period of time. So the intent with this section remains similar to what we're using now with the Traffic Safety Act, so that we do not have abandoned or inoperable vehicles on the street. The enforcement of this will be very similar to what we are doing now with the chalking of the tires, taking a photo and coming back in 72 hours to ensure the vehicle moved at least a car length ahead. This wording is the same as the St. Albert traffic bylaw, and I do not anticipate residents will find this overly restricted or limiting in parking. The second option that we have for your consideration is to add a little bit more restriction to the street parking and the bylaw where people must move their vehicle every 72 hours and it must be off the street entirely for a period of 24 hours. The intent with this section and wording will definitely restrict parking on the streets, and it will increase officers' time spent on this type of a parking complaint, as they will have to come back and check multiple times to ensure that the vehicle did in fact move for 24 hours. This can be a bit more difficult to enforce, however, it is an option. It does solve the issue of people moving their cars ahead slightly to prove that it is an operating vehicle. And the intent will change within our bylaw to limit and restrict street parking by adding this restriction of the removal of the vehicle for 24 hours. Option 3 would have the traffic bylaw remain the same, and we would deal with abandoned vehicles and on-street parking as we already do with the Traffic Safety Act. As I've mentioned, this does work for the purposes of ensuring we do not have abandoned and inoperable vehicles parked on the street. Administration does request council to proceed to second and third reading of the traffic bylaw C26-22, amending traffic bylaw C17-22. And that concludes my presentation, and Sergeant Hardman and I are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I have a procedural one before we go to questions. So what you're presenting here, because it's had first readings, slide over, Andrew, I can't see you. So it's had first reading. So with what they're presenting here today, they are suggesting an amendment.
To your worship, yes, I believe that they've made changes at the direction, well, maybe not at the direction, but given the feedback of council, and the motion in front of me reads as amended. Otherwise, there are options that would require a motion to integrate into the bylaw before you.
Okay, my motion just says which amends, so we may have a difference between ours.
Okay, we'll look at that. Thanks.
So as long as it says as amended, that captures. I'm just procedurally trying to figure out, because you've provided 3 options. I'll just wait for Andrew. Because you provided 3 options, was one of these options actually integrated into it as for the as amended?
I can pull up the bylaw in front of me here. I'm not sure off the top of my head in which way it differs from what was given to council for first.
Okay, let's just take Mr. Fleming.
I was going to say it is. We did talk about that very briefly. Council is, or we are permitted to make changes between first and second reading as long as we don't substantially change the intent of the bylaw. And this is just my opinion that I don't think this substantially changes the intent of the bylaw. It does change the one regulation, but it would be my perspective that council could continue on.
Okay, that's fine.
It's a good question.
Yeah, well, I just needed to know procedurally, so great, thank you. All right, so questions? Councillor Blizzard?
So to get that alternative 1, we have to make a motion for it, the recommended option, because I would do that.
Your worship, through to Councillor Blizzard, I did include that, so I have that option as within the amending bylaw.
So we don't
I've
need to
included
amend it.
If any councillor wanted to change it to go with one of the other recommendations, then a new motion would be made.
So the number 1 with the in close proximity is part of it, so we don't need to make a motion.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Karina, I think that last question just pointed out one of the comments I had the first time this came through. And I'm not a PDF nor a Word expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it would make sense and certainly help us and help me for sure if we could get a red line version that shows the changes you've made between readings or between policies or bylaws, so that I don't have to pull both of them up together or on my iPad, scroll back and forth and try to figure it out. And I think it helps everybody if you could give that some consideration for the future. I just want to talk about the trailer/RV parking. So as I understand it now, the proposed amendments or proposed amendment in front of us adds trailers to be treated exactly the way we're proposing or have been treating RVs. And once you've occupied for 48 hours, it's got to get off this. I assume any street in Fort Saskatchewan, not just that block, for a period of not less than 24 hours. Is that correct?
Your worship, through to Councillor Kelly, the intent there would be that it would remove from that street, that location, for a period of 48 hours.
And I know there's an enforcement issue, and you would only enforce it if, in fact, somebody complained. I know nobody expects you to drive around town to try to find these things. But why wouldn't we just say remove from the road within the municipality? Because I don't think we're solving a lot if we're having a constant shuffle of vehicles pulling RVs, moving or rotating around the block, elephant parade style.
Your worship, through to Councillor Kelly, in our motion, it is from the highway from that period of time for 48 hours. So that is basically every roadway. So I will.
Thank you. That's what I thought, but I wanted clarification. So it's got to be removed from a municipal highway for 48 hours. That's your understanding? And you will enforce it on a complaint basis, I would assume?
Your worship, through to Councillor Kelly. Exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nguyen, questions?
Yeah, just on the recreational trailers then, so that's only living quarters trailers that we're talking about kind of thing. That's all trailers that can be used for like quads or skidoos or anything like that that's used for recreation.
Your worship, through to Councillor Norian, that is correct. It's any trailer, so that's utility trailer or live-in trailers as well.
Okay, thanks for that. I had a question about that disturbing noises bylaw. So there's a fine $250 if it's over that the decibel level once we get this technology. So I kind of wanted some clarification about the fine if somebody fails to comply. Then, so you would be giving them instructions that they've been stopped because the noise seems like it's excessive, and then this is the process we're going to go through. Like, would you be telling people then that there is a fine if you don't comply with it? That's
Your worship, through to Councillor Noyan, exactly that. So the fine is increased, so it is that $500 fine if someone was not to comply with our direction at that time. So we would advise them of that before, of course, we would go to that.
okay, and then non-compliance would ultimately it incurs the fine as well for the disturbing noise as well. So if somebody doesn't comply, then it's $750 that they're paying for. That's not correct, because that's the way I read it.
Your worship, through to Councillor Noyan, no, it would be $500 for the fine for non-compliance. It would not add the additional $250 on top of that. It would just be that $500 at that time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you for your presentation and good to see both of you. I'm really struggling with this abandoned vehicle section. So if, for example, there is a snowstorm and maybe I'm sick for a few days and I had my car parked on the streets in front of my house, have I broken the bylaw?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Abatoye, so you can park on the street with 72 hours. If someone makes a complaint that your vehicle is still there, an officer will contact you to see if you can move your vehicle. So they do that educational approach first. They don't typically go straight to a ticket. And you will be notified, hey, can you move your car, and to avoid a ticket.
So what exactly is the purpose though?
The purpose, sorry, Your Worship, through to Councillor Abatoye, the purpose of this section or the abandoned vehicles is so that vehicles are not left on the street for weeks at a time that are inoperable. This will happen where someone will park a vehicle that they own that doesn't currently work, and it sits on the street. So that's the main intent behind our restriction there.
Yeah, so I understand for an extended time, but 72 hours is just 3 days. Like, I can decide to not go to work and work from home for 3 days and not get out of my house. Right, so the 72 hours, where did that come from? Is that like from the traffic bylaw, the provincial traffic bylaw?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Abatoye, it is from the Traffic Safety Act. That's where the 72 hours comes in. And it is if it is the will of council that you can change that time limit within your bylaw.
So you made a statement about not being restrictive when you were doing your presentation. I really agree with that comment. I think that's it's important for us not be restrictive because all kinds of things can happen. And just my final question before I just pass it on. So if someone was sick and they're not able to move their vehicle, is the peace officer going to say, oh, you have to do it because it's against the bylaw?
Your worship, through to Councillor Abatoye, no, my officers would contact the person first and find out that situation. And if there is an understandable situation there, we would not be enforcing that, or we wouldn't ticket or tow for that. If we were not in contact with that person, for example, or if we would want that removal of 72 hours, so that we would contact the person in essence first, and then officer discretion would be used at that point in time. But we do default to the provincial standards of that 72 hours is where that 72 hours has come from.
Well, I hope to have a nice neighbor then. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. There doesn't appear to be any further questions. Would somebody like to put the motion on? Councillor Harris.
I would be prepared to move that council gives second reading to bylaw C 26-22, which amends traffic bylaw C 1722.
Mr. Kaiser, is it supposed to say as amended?
As amended.
Yes, it is, Your Worship. Supposed to say as amended.
Okay.
We see that on our end, I believe.
Yeah, it doesn't come through to ours, so it's
Okay.
as amended. Okay?
It's in the report.
I know, but our,
Thank you.
yes. Okay, so would you like
pleased
to
you
speak
pointed
to your motion?
Oh, yes, yes. I have a lot to say. I think we've had an iterative process to talk about changes to this important bylaw, so I'm glad to see that you've listened to the input from council and the things that you've picked up through enforcement over time. And I'm glad that it's before us today and we can move forward with the bylaw in good fashion.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. My only concerns with the amendments to this bylaw is that it does give some discretion to your department on how to use this. Well, obviously, we're taking your word about how it's going to be applied with in the scenario with abandoned vehicles, and I trust you guys will follow through doing that. It seems as though if you think of different scenarios where somebody could have a vehicle say parked on the street, that it could give the opportunity to have a vehicle removed immediately or something like that. So I'm glad to hear the feedback that you're giving us into the implementation of this bylaw, and so I thank you for your work on it as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, thanks. I perhaps didn't catch the significance of the conversation you, Mayor, had with administration at the start of this. I'm having trouble understanding a motion that says, which amends traffic bylaw, blah, 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 as amended.
It's no. Oh, okay. Yeah, so the question that I had to them was, did we have to put any amending motions on? So bylaw C26 amends bylaw C17, but we're amending C26. So Mr. Kaiser?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So based on the discussions that happened at first reading, administration made some changes to address some of those points, as well as prepared additional options that could have been incorporated through an amendment. But the bylaw, the meeting procedures bylaw, only states that on second and third reading, after the presentation for a second or third, it would require amendments. So because these changes were made after first reading, administration incorporated them for consideration.
Thank you. And
I hope that clarifies it.
I would hope that it would, but I'm not convinced, so it might be just me. You're satisfied that this motion accomplishes its intent?
Through your worship, to Councillor Kelly, yes. After first reading, some changes were made based on the discussion, and then it was presented as amended.
Okay.
And it's an amending bylaw to the current traffic bylaw. So we're making a motion in a circle, but we're ending up going in the right direction.
And as Mr. Fleming had indicated, as long as they weren't significant, it was within their right to do that without us having to make a bunch of amending motions.
Catcher, I'm good with it. It's confusing, but if we're satisfied, I'm good with it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Harris on close.
So to pick up on that point, so in other words, the head bylaw is C1722, which will be the bylaw, which has been amended by C2622, which we're giving 2 readings today within the context of that parliamentary context. Okay. And so therefore, when you go forward to enforce the complaint, or the violation tag or ticket will be issued in accordance with C17-22.
Mr. Fleming?
Dear Worship, could we just take a 5-minute break just so we can check one thing quickly? And
Sure.
Then, yeah, thank you
Okay.
very much.
5 after. We'll recess for 5 minutes.
This is not the way I would have done it, but
Okay, we will resume the meeting. Mr. Fleming.
Yeah, through your worship, we're in good shape. We just wanted to double check. So the motion is in order, we believe.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go to Councillor Harris. You were doing close. You're good. All right. So the motion is now closed for second reading. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimous. Would you like to continue with third?
I would put the motion on the floor that is required to be on the floor.
Would you like to read it since we're on YouTube?
Well, apparently the one in my
Miss Huxley, can
report
you
is
put it
not
on the
correct.
screen? No? So basically,
Okay,
what's
so-
on there, and just put as amended at the end.
So let me see if I can do this. That council give third reading to bylaw C-2622, which amends traffic bylaw C-17-22 as amended.
Okay. No, Miss Huxley's shaking her head.
Well, whatever it needs to be, please put it on the screen and we'll vote on it.
Okay, are we having a technical? Okay.
I think you did it right. She just can't do it. It wasn't your problem.
Then let's vote.
We can't.
In the immortal words of Councillor Abatoye, let's vote. Well, this doesn't have the amended.
It doesn't have as amended on the end. Or no, we don't have to do that
Sorry,
again.
Your Worship, you do not need amended at the end.
I understand, right. We don't need that because we already amended it. Okay, so please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And that's your Christmas present all wrapped up in a bow. All right, Miss Exley, is yours working okay now?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Your Worship. I'm not too sure. It's getting hung up. There's an extreme delay. So as soon as I put up a motion, you vote, it shows who's voting, and it gets stuck. So well, I'll try to do my best.
No, you're doing fine. I just want to make sure you're okay back there. Okay. Okay, the next one we have is the property tax payment penalty waiver request. Trish Norman presenting.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of Council. I am Trish Norman, Revenue Services Coordinator with the City. I'm here this afternoon to request Council's decision regarding the property tax penalty waiver request for 2022 late payment penalties that were imposed to Property Tax Roll 462-3201. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with background information on Property Tax Roll 462-3201 as the property owner is requesting a waiver of a property tax late payment penalty. On November 15th, 2022, the City of Fort Saskatchewan received an application from the property owner requesting a waiver for property tax late payment penalties in accordance with the property tax penalty waiver policy and procedure. As of November the 7th, 2022, the property owner has paid the full balance of outstanding property tax arrears, including late payment penalties in the amount of $1,029.31. The property owner has consequently made an application for Council to consider late payment penalty reimbursement under compassionate grounds. Administration is not authorized to make this decision, as only Council has the authority to waive late payment penalties for property taxes. Administration's recommendation is to deny the request to waive the late payment penalties. I can now answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Ms. Norman? Councillor Kelly?
Yes, thank you. We've been through this many times, but I'm still not convinced I completely understand it. So if a taxpayer, if a property owner was on a monthly installment plan, and if that property owner over the course of the 12-month installment sequence missed one payment, and that one payment was still in arrears past June 30th, what would the arrears penalty be for that particular situation where essentially 11/12 of the anticipated tax is paid and 1/12 is not?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, the policy or the procedure for our monthly payment plan does not allow a payment to remain in arrears until the end of the year. So if a payment was missed in June, they would have to make up that payment before proceeding with the balance of the monthly payments. We don't allow the monthly payments to go into arrears. So you can't go into arrears if you're on the FEP program. You would be removed if you don't make up that payment and pay it at the time.
Okay. But I'm not sure that answers my question. So the 12-month cycle for monthly payments, I think, and this is where I'm asking for correction, starts on January 1 of the calendar year and proceeds to the end of the calendar year, or does it start on July 1 of the prior year and proceed around to June 30th of the next year for that property tax year?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, it goes from January to December of each year.
Okay, so, and it seems fair then, you're prepaying 6 months of your property taxes and get the luxury of paying the last 6 months in arrears essentially with no penalty. So what would happen if, in that particular situation, a taxpayer missed the August payment but made the September, October, November, December, or they wouldn't be allowed to make them?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, they would have to make up that August payment before we would proceed to withdraw the September, October, November, December payments from their account. They have to make up that payment.
Okay, and in that situation, assuming they didn't catch up and there ended up being 4 months in arrears, what would the penalty be at that time?
Through your worship to Councillor Kelly, they would have 30 days to pay the entire balance of the year, or they would be assessed penalties for, depending on what date they missed the payment on. If it was August, they would have 30 days to make the full remainder of the 6 months, or they would be assessed the September payment, or sorry, pardon me, the September penalty, and then not be penalized again until, of course, January of the following year.
Okay, thank you. I think that's clear. So because they would be assessed a September penalty, they do avoid the July 1st penalty. So there's some bit of a break for making the installments, even though you find yourself in difficulty toward the end of the year.
Through your worship, that is correct.
And one last question. To the best of your knowledge, approximately what percentage of property owners have signed up for the installment plan? Just curious.
Through your worship, to Councillor Kelly, it is approximately 1/3 of property owners that...
And we actively promote it?
Through your worship, yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't appear to be any additional questions. What is the wish of council? Councillor Kelly?
I know we've dealt with this before, but I'd just like it on the floor today. If no councillor steps forward to make the motion, this thing just dies a natural death.
Mr. Kaiser or Mr. Fleming?
Your worship, council has to approve the waiver. So if there's no decision made, we would consider the waiver to not be approved, and the penalty would still be owed.
Mr. Fleming, and I see, you know what, I'll wait for Councillor Harris and then maybe chime back in. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Harris?
So at this point in time, if we disagree with the homeowner's request for a waiver, we can put a motion to deny the request to waive the penalty. Now, I take some exception to the way this report is written, because I respect the fact that there are the necessity of a positive motion. But in this case, the positive motion, in accordance with our policy, is to deny the request, unless it meets very stringent guidelines. And so then the question is, do you believe the request of the person requesting the waiver complies with our policy? And if not, then the motion is to deny the request.
So, procedurally, Mr. Fleming, under Robert's rules, we are supposed to put a positive motion on. Mr.
Through
Kaiser?
your worship, I can't speak to Robert's rules. I only know that it's considered to be a best practice to use positively worded motions. And the last time we dealt with this, we had a negatively worded motion, and it was a little bit challenging for us to understand what to do if a negatively worded motion gets defeated. So our recommendation is to put a positively worded motion forward, and then it's clear the direction going forward depending on the outcome of that.
Councillor Harris?
I really disagree with that. The bottom line is there is no requirement to have a positive or a negative motion. It's just a motion. Whatever somebody in the assembly chooses to put on the floor, they can put a positive motion, they can put a negative motion. Doesn't matter. It needs to be a motion that we vote on.
Exactly. And administration is recommending to deny the request. So if you wish, you may put on a motion to deny it and see where it goes.
Well, Councillor Kelly had initially buzzed in first. I was just looking for clarification because
but the question, just hold on,
yeah,
but the question of Councillor Kelly is if no motion comes forward, the actions of administration is that then it would be deemed that it was not approved.
That's correct. Council, the only way the property tax waiver gets approved is if council approves it. Everything else is considered to be a denial.
Okay,
and Councillor Harris is right. He can make whatever motion he wishes. It doesn't have to be the one we've recommended.
Okay, we're just talking procedures right now. Okay.
And I think, I guess from my point of view on this, and procedurally, having dealt with these many times, it is better to put a motion to deny on the floor so we actually make a definitive decision as a council relative to the individual's request.
Okay, well, it's up to council what they want to put on the floor. Councillor Kelly?
Thank you. Appreciate your comments, Councillor Harris. Mr. Fleming, back to you, and then I'm prepared to put a motion on if you'll accept it, Mayor Catcher. If it's a negative motion, and that negative motion fails, it really doesn't say anything.
Through your worship, that's what happened the last time. That's what we learned. Yes.
And that's where I stumble with the negative motion. So I think council should have a discussion on this. I will make the motion, Mayor Catcher, pardon me.
Okay.
I move that council grant the request to waive the late payment penalties applied to the associated property tax roll number 463201 on July 1, August 1, and September 1, 2022 in the amount of $1,029.31.
Would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. I know the property owner is present. I would encourage the property owner to, if at all possible, get enrolled in the monthly installment plan. It helps. Even if you miss a payment or two, you might find that you're subject to less penalty. And beyond that, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to vote against the motion I just made. I spent 40 plus years as a practicing public accountant, and I dealt with Revenue Canada on a month-by-month basis for 40 plus years. Every month was a deadline. If those deadlines weren't met, penalties were applied. And CRA really didn't care whether Brian Kelly was sick or on holidays or otherwise incapacitated. So I get your angst, sir, and I understand that $1,000 is a lot of money, but it's taxes, and if there weren't penalties in place, we would find that we would have problem collecting a significant portion of the taxes, and that's just the unfortunate reality. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's open for discussion and debate. Councillor Harris?
I can be compassionate in relation to the request, but given the fact that the reasons given in the tax waiver request, I don't see them as consistent with our procedures in the policy. it has to be something very significant. And I would suggest that we would probably have to, if we granted this, we would have to turn around and cancel everybody's penalties, regardless of their circumstances, because everybody had a hard time during COVID. I get that. I totally understand that. But being a homeowner means that you have certain responsibilities. And if you can't pay, unfortunately, we have a graduated tax penalty that ultimately allows you to miss one and not have to have a full 18%. It's graduated. So that in itself is probably a reasonable compromise in that regard. So I appreciate the nature of the circumstances, but in this case, to be consistent with our policy and our procedure for that policy, I think we have to deny the request.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any additional discussion or debate. Councillor Kelly, anything on close?
Nothing further, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. Motion is defeated, 0-7. Sorry. All right, thank you very much, Trish. All right. We have dealt with 7.2, so we will go on to 7.3, public member appointments, board and committees. Andrew Kaiser presenting.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Andrew Kaiser. I'm with Legislative Services, and I'm here to present on the public member appointments to various boards and committees, municipal boards and committees, being the Fort Saskatchewan Policing Committee, the Fort Saskatchewan Public Library Board, Fort Saskatchewan's Youth Council, the River Valley Alliance Community Engagement Committee, as well as our city's Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. There's a few members there, too many for me to read out, and I hope I pronounced them all correctly. So I will welcome any questions you may have about these recommended appointments.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Abatoye? Okay, not seeing any questions. Go ahead.
No questions? Okay. I'll make a motion that council approve the public member appointments to the city's municipal boards and committees as outlined below, and as recommended by the Application Review Committee for terms commencing on January 1st, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Wait for the motion to pop up. You have to go back there? Okay. All right, this motion is closed. Once it comes up, you can please cast your... Oh, sorry, any discussion and debate? Sorry. Did you wish to speak in favor?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, say thank you to Councillor Blizzard for going through the interviews with these candidates, and obviously see a lineup of very good candidates. And I actually want to just commend Colby Mask, who is here with us today. I remember last month seeing him here sitting through all of council meeting the whole time, and I'd approached him about joining the youth council, and I'm really proud to see his name on here. And just, you know, just really thankful for all the volunteers we continue to have in our community who continue to serve in all these various capacities in these boards and committees. So yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on discussion and debate? No, not seeing anything. Anything on close? You're good. Okay, I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. Okay, and that is carried 7-0. We have dealt with 7.4 under consent agenda. Are there any notice of motions? Councillor Nguyen.
Just give me 1 second here. So at the January 10th, 2023 regular council meeting, I will bring forward the following motion: that the City of Fort Saskatchewan initiate the steps to dissolve the EMTSC as governed by the EMTSC's Bylaw 4, a bylaw respecting the process for disestablishment of the Commission, including a written notice of motion proposing to dissolve the EMTSC including reasons for dissolving with the proposed date of dissolution being April 30th, 2023, and request the signature of at least 3 directors of the EMTSC, and when these requirements are completed, delivered to all members and directors of the EMTSC, the CEO of the EMTSC, and the minister.
Okay, and that has been provided to Ledge Services.
Does.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other notice of motions? Not seeing any. Are there any points of interest? Not seeing any. Are there? Oh, point of interest. Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so the RVA has named the trail going from Fort Saskatchewan to Devon. I don't know if anybody heard, but it's called the Beaver Hill Road, and that was announced a couple of weeks ago at the last meeting before Christmas. And as well, the library board is going to be seeking a new chair come January. So we had 1-year appointment with Nadia, who presented the budget to council, and she will not be returning for the upcoming year.
Okay, thank you. And other point of interest, Harbor Pool will be celebrating their 40th this weekend on Saturday, I believe it is, Miss Cowie, and the public is welcome to join in. If you just want to give the details quick for anybody who's watching.
Yes, Harbor Pool celebrates 40 years of being open this Saturday afternoon. Drop by, see pictures. I believe that there's refreshments, I think starting at about 1 o'clock.
All right, thank you. Okay, I will take a motion to go in camera. Councillor Kelly, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I move that council adjourn and move in camera according to the rules of FOIP.
Thank you. Close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously.
I was pretty sure we're going to finish by 6, but this is
This is
mind-blowing.
record.